God has been taking me on quite the journey through His Word, not just this morning, but just this last week in general. And I'm excited to talk about what He has been teaching me, not just in this last week, but over the last several years. And so, this thing sounds a little funny. So before we get into the Word, I'm going to ask some questions. Do I have any gardeners in the room? If you have planted something, even if you've just tried to plant something, I'll call that a gardener. Okay. Or does anyone even just know kind of a little bit about plants? Yes? Okay, cool. So gardening is something that I personally love. And it's not something I always knew that I loved until just a few years ago, maybe the last 3 to 4. And I have learned the hard way. So I read this thing once. It said, the best gardeners have killed the most plants. And I'm probably a top contender. The amount of plants that I have killed is laughable. But it has allowed me to really learn about what plants require. And every plant is so different, right? Like some of them need a particular kind of pH in the soil. Some need to be planted in this amount of sun exposure. And each plant requires something different. Some require you to drench them in water, while some just wants a slow trickle that's consistent. Like it's each one is different. So over the last few years, I've come to just kind of know, okay, what works for me? I have found that I don't love growing food. It's not my favorite because it's higher maintenance than I like. You have to weed things more often than I typically like to, and you have to make sure you're picking the fruit or the vegetables at the right time. And so I grow flowers. Those seem to be just my niche. That's what makes me happy. I grow them in every variety. I try something new every year. And that is what is it's fun to me, it's sustainable. Well, I have come to know 2 other things, that you don't have to plant something in your garden for it to be there. So I have 2 plants that are in my garden that I did not plant, that every year they try to take over and dominate everything. So the first one is what I have just found out recently. It's called a white jasmine vine. Does anybody know what that is or what it looks like? No? So it's very beautiful. It stays green most of the year until the very last portion of summer into the early fall, and then it finally blooms, and it's these white, fragrant flowers that look very like if I had to describe it, it'd be like fairy snow. Like it's kind of like baby's breath, but a little bit bigger. And they smell fantastic. So, but this plant, all summer long, while it stays in this green phase, it takes over everything. It takes over my fence. It takes over my gutter. It intertwines and collapses in my peonies. And I have to cut it back 4 times, minimum 4 times throughout the entire summer, just to keep it controlled, to keep it in the areas I want it to be. And so I keep it because it's beautiful and it smells really nice. And so that's the only thing that prevents me from ripping this thing up. So the second plant that I have that grows in my garden, this plant is the bane of my existence. It is poison ivy. This poison ivy, I have lived in the house that I'm in for around 20 years, and I have never in my life seen poison ivy in my yard until I think it was last year. I was weeding my rose bed, and all of a sudden, 3 days later, look, I've got poison ivy. And so this plant, my poor husband, you guys, my poor husband, Ever since I got poison ivy, I was like, I ain't touching that thing again. And so Tim, who thought he was immune to poison ivy, we've quickly found out that that was a lie. He has tried everything to get rid of this poison ivy in my garden. And aside from poison, which would then kill my roses. And so he has ripped it up 2 to 3 times from the root, just tried to pull it out. He has flamethrowed this poison ivy, and nothing is killing it. It grows back thicker and stronger every single time he tries to rip it up. And so we have these 2 plants that are growing in the garden. One of them is a plant that I love, it's a good plant, and the other one is not. And so this brings me to my second question. Have you ever had something in your life that no matter how much you rip it up, how much you try to get rid of it, it keeps coming back? And sometimes even multiplying. And you're like, where did this come from? So again, the reason that I have 2 different examples of these plants, a good and a bad, is because it can present like that in our life too. We can have something bad in our life that every time we try to rip it up, it comes back in double. And it chokes out the good. And we can also have good in our life that comes back stronger and stronger through every storm and every trial that it goes through, and it chokes out the bad. And so we have these 2 examples in our life. So in the story of Matthew that we are going through, they experienced this very thing. And Matthew has been one of my favorite books of the Bible to read. Some of you prefer John or even Luke, but Matthew is mine. It's kind of what speaks to me the most. I think we all have ours. But so we've been going through Matthew chapter by chapter, verse by verse, and just really digging into it. So last week, Casey went over the first half of chapter 17. And the first half was where Jesus took Peter, James, and John, and they went up this mountain, and up this mountain, they saw the spirit of Moses and the spirit of Elijah. They call this the mountain of transfiguration. And so as they're coming down this mountain, that is where our story picks up today. And so if you have your Bible, I want you to go ahead and pull it out. And if you don't, that's okay. I think we will have it on the screen. But we will be in Matthew chapter 17, verses 14 through 20. At the foot of the mountain, a large crowd was waiting for them. A man came and knelt before Jesus and said, "Lord, have mercy on my son. He has seizures and suffers terribly. He often falls into the fire or into the water. So I brought him to your disciples, but they couldn't heal him." Jesus said, "You faithless and corrupt people, how long must I be with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me." We're going to pause right there. So everyone has a verse that they really cling to, that they really love. This is mine. How long must I endure you? This verse, I'm sure that the disciples didn't think it was funny at the time, but I really relate to this verse. This verse is hilarious to me because it's so relatable. This is savage Jesus. He was like, "What are you guys doing? How much longer do we have to go through this? I've told you, this is the key." And so what we will come to know about Jesus saying this is he isn't scolding them. He's training them. Let's pick back up. Afterward, verse 19, the disciples asked Jesus privately, "Why couldn't we cast out that demon?" Jesus says, "You don't have enough faith. I tell you the truth, if you had faith even as small as a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it would move. Nothing would be impossible." I don't have this next scripture on the slide, so I'm just going to read it to you. But this is Matthew chapter 10, verse 1. And so this chapter is just a few short, 7 chapters ago? Matthew chapter 10, verse 1. And he called the 12 disciples and began to send them out 2 by 2, and gave them authority over the unclean spirits. He charged them to take nothing for their journey except a staff, no bread, no bag, no money in their belts. So in this chapter, we see that Jesus had given them, all 12 of the disciples, the authority to do the very thing that in this chapter they couldn't. So what happened? They had the authority to do it. Why couldn't they? Because at this point in their walk with Jesus, right, we've got a whole 7 chapters of the journey. But yet they come to a point in their walk after they've been given authority where their faith in what Jesus had already established them to do had been diminished. We're going to read one more. This is James chapter 1. Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. If you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking, but when you ask him, be sure that your faith is in God alone. Do not waver, for a person with divided loyalty is as unsettled as a wave of the sea that is blown and tossed by the wind. Such people should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Their loyalty is divided between God and the world, and they are unstable in everything that they do. James 1 paints a beautiful picture of how faith grows. It grows through testing, through suffering, through trials. It builds your endurance that causes it to grow more rapidly. And what can happen is when we experience these things, when we experience hardship, when the money doesn't come through, or the job doesn't get lined up, or the girlfriend breaks up with you, or whatever it is, when we experience these things, we have a choice that we can make. We can choose to either lean into God and let him grow our faith where our confidence collapsed, or we can turn away from him and try to control the situation. And so, what happened? Have you allowed your faith to diminish? Let me take it a step further. What have you allowed to steal your joy? What have you allowed to rob you of your passion and your power? Because I'll be honest, we will sit around here sometimes and we will talk more about how broke we are, how stressed we are, how our mental health is struggling, how depressed or anxious or so-and-so treated me like this, and we will talk more about these things than we will about how good our God is and how faithful he is. Even as Christians, what's the first word that usually comes out of your mouth when someone says, "Hey, how you doing?" "Just busy, man. I'm tired. Got a lot going on. The kids, the work. Just busy." And God's kind of sits on the back burner. We don't talk as much about him. We don't talk about how blessed we truly are because we have a faithful God. We glorify the things that are happening to us more than the one who is for us. And that's a problem. So, I would like us to do a quick check-in this morning. Check-ins are really important. We should be doing them daily, but we don't. And this is just a little self-reflection. And so I'm going to ask you some questions, and then we're going to have just a few moments of silence, and I want you to talk to the Lord about it. Lord, reveal to me what it is you want me to hear here. And I don't want you to immediately answer the question with what you think you should answer it. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with him. Because that's the only way change is going to happen. The question is, when things stop going the way that I want, what do I immediately reach for to feel secure? Is it Jesus? Or is it something else? When the money's not going how you want it to go, are you reaching out to control it? To get a loan? To go to the casino to win it? Or are you asking the Lord for heavenly provision and expecting to receive it? Are you full of faith in that area? Or are you full of fear and worry? To make it even more clear, ask yourself, what do I fear losing the most? Is it that new business? Do you fear losing that because maybe you'll look bad? You're afraid of how it's going to look, how it's going to turn out, how you're going to have to struggle through it, what people are going to think. Maybe it's that relationship. You're afraid to lose it because you don't want to be alone. What do you fear losing the most? And what do you reach for? When you feel fear and worry and anxiousness, do you reach for alcohol? Do you reach for drugs? Do you reach for food? Do you reach for a person? There are so many things that we will put our trust in far above trusting the one who's never let us down. And when we try to control things, we strip him of the opportunity to bless us. And we will never fully experience his God-given provision. So I want you to take a few minutes and just talk to him. Lord, what have I put before you? What have I tried to control where you've tried to bless? Matthew 17, 14, 20. You don't have enough faith, Jesus told them. I tell you the truth. If you had faith even as small as a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it would move. Nothing would be impossible. When I was growing up and I would hear this verse, how I heard it was, even if you just have a little bit of faith, that's what Jesus meant. You just need a little. And really what he meant by this was in the mystery of the mustard seed itself. And maybe some of you know this already, but at that time, everyone knew what a mustard seed was, what it would grow into, and that was the bane of their existence, like the poison ivy for me. A mustard seed is so tiny, but when planted, it grows. It grows 6 to 8 feet deep. It spreads and it keeps spreading. It will take over an entire field. It was invasive, and it grew to be huge. And no matter how hard you tried to cut this thing down, no matter how hard the storms were, nothing could shake this plant. And it grows so big that the birds find shelter underneath of it. So Jesus wasn't saying, if you have just a little bit of faith. He was saying, have faith as the mustard seed that grows deep, that spreads wide, that gets huge, that no matter what life throws at it, it can stand anything. His point wasn't just to have a little faith, it was to have living faith, growing faith, faith that could overcome anything, any obstacle. Faith that could transform the world. That's the kind of faith he wants us to have. Do you remember when you first came to know the Lord, how good it felt to believe he could do anything? Anything. You can believe that again. And if you feel like your faith is just this tiny mustard seed, that it's worthless because it's so tiny, God says, don't despise the small beginnings. Plant that faith. Plant it in soil. Plant it in him. Nurture it. Water it. Feed it. And watch it grow. Don't let life jade you. You can have this kind of faith again. Let's believe it this morning. And let's plant it in good soil.